Today, I'm going to talk about freedom and liberty in early Western civilization, especially according to Aristotle and Cicero. Although today we think of the two terms as identical, there are differences not only between the two terms, but also between understandings of what freedom and liberty is. Looking at the etymology of the terms, Hannah Fenichel described that freedom and liberty are not simply interchangeable. First of all, because of the origins of the terms. Freedom is Germanic, while liberty derives from the Latin. Since the Normans became the ruling class of England, the Latin liber was used in government, law, and religion, while the Anglo-Saxon fray was used more in daily life. As Paul Ziff put it, thus the difference between freedom and liberty is analogous to the difference between justice and fairness. Freedom is usually understood more generally, such as freedom of movement, whereas liberty is often more formal, particularly tied to political rights in the absence of needless restrictions. The emphasis here should be on the word needless, since some basic restrictions are needed, such as you are not at liberty to murder another person. As with some words in the English language, the term has different meanings, and translated from the Greek, Aristotle displays those different understandings of the term freedom. The basic understanding of the term eleutheria in Greek is that of not being a slave. Aristotle described slaves should be well treated and should be encouraged by the hope of freedom, i.e., no longer being a slave. Aristotle also notes an idea of freedom that he understands to be wrong, as he wrote, "The distribution of offices according to merit is a special characteristic of aristocracy, for the principle of aristocracy is virtue, as wealth is of an oligarchy and freedom of a democracy." Thus, in this instance, some might see the idea of freedom simply as participation in the political process. He continues toward another false idea of freedom as he described, "In extreme democracies there is a false idea of freedom. Men think only of the supremacy of the people, which means that they may do as they like. This is usually the modern idea of freedom, to live as one wants or to do what one pleases." However, according to Aristotle, there is a problem with this idea of freedom, and he assessed that no one should be allowed to do just as he pleases, for where absolute freedom is allowed, there is nothing to restrain the evil which is inherent in every man. Thus, what we might call Aristotelian freedom is not merely to do what one likes, but rather to like what one ought to do. The free man has the rational capacity of apprehending suitable ends and choosing appropriate means to those ends. In essence, a free man who has freedom does not only do what he desires, but he desires that which is truly good. In his works De Re Republica and De Legibus, Cicero discussed his understanding of Roman libertas, or liberty. Like the different conceptions of freedom in ancient Greece, there were different conceptions in ancient Rome between the optimates and the populares. Liberty for Cicero had to be ordered liberty. If it was not, it only amounted to license and anarchy. For Cicero, liberty is especially tied to economic liberty, as he described, concord cannot exist when money is taken from some and bestowed upon others. In regards to morality, he made a sharp distinction between civil law, which is produced by legislative bodies, and customs that are the product of historical practice, and natural law, which is a universal law extending to all mankind from outside the creation of man. He described, "Law is the distinction between things just and unjust, made in agreement with the primal and most ancient of all things, nature. And in conformity to nature's standard are framed those human laws which inflict punishment upon the wicked, but defend and protect the good." Moreover, Cicero understood the objective basis by governing through natural law. As he described, "Civil laws and customs that are not in conformity with natural law are not considered to be laws at all. Natural laws are objective moral laws that exist external of human development, such as commands not to murder and steal, and inalienable rights such as the right to life and the right to self-defense." From what I described, I would argue that there is a correct understanding of freedom and liberty. Despite there being different definitions between the two terms and various interpretations of each, that does not necessarily mean there isn't a correct understanding of each. Freedom is not merely free will to do as you like. Freedom is the ability to do what you ought. Liberty is political freedom from arbitrary laws that do not logically extend from natural law. Natural law is the basis for good government, including freedom and liberty, due to its objective nature and consequent absence of arbitrary coercion, whereas arbitrary rule leads to anarchy and tyranny because it's based not upon freedom and liberty, but rather on power through the subjective will of others.